When it comes to weapons in D&D, not all of them were created equal, and many are considered to be mechanically subpar. On top of this, the rulebooks don't provide us much detail on these weapons, leaving us to fill in the gaps of how our weapons look and feel. Due to this lack of information, I'd like to go through and examine all the weapons of D&D to answer: what is this weapon, both in history and in D&D? How is it different from the other weapons available? And does it need to be made better, and how can we do so? For today's video, let's nail down some details on another simple weapon, the light hammer. A light hammer is a hand tool used to deliver an impact to a small area or object. Traditionally consisting of a stone or metallic head fixed to a wooden handle through wedging, glue, or both, the two-piece design is meant to combine a dense striking head with a shock-absorbing handle. Weighing between 1 to 2 kilograms, with a handle measuring up to 35 centimeters, most hammers have one flat end for striking and a small, rounded peen on the other end. Designs have also included claws to pull out nails, magnets to pull out upholstery tacks, or even a blade, as seen with some versions of the hand axe. While simple hammers with no handle date back to 3.3 million years ago, handled hammers have been found dating back to the Paleolithic Stone Age, making it the oldest tool for which definite archaeological evidence exists. Similar to the hand axe, the hammer was largely used as a tool for building, performing tasks like smithing, mining, and carpentry. In times of war, however, commonplace objects would be pressed into service. Before standardized militaries, levies and conscripts would bring whatever they had available into combat. For poor farmers, fishermen, and peasants in ancient and medieval history, even if you had no other weapons around the house, odds are you had a hammer, and one well-placed strike could still be deadly. Even when swung in one hand, a 2-kilogram hammer can generate up to 130 pounds of force, which is enough to break ribs, fracture a skull, or dent heavy metal armor. While not as impressive as a warhammer or maul, the hammer's light weight makes repeated strikes exceptionally easy, able to dish out attacks quickly across an opponent's body. As one of the oldest tools used by man, the hammer has been symbolic in heraldry and folklore. In the Middle Ages, the image of a hammer typically represented a blacksmith shop, and a hammer and pick represented a mine. In mythology, the Norse god Thor, Celtic god Sucellus, and Greek hero Hercules all had hammers that represented their strength and power. Even in modern times, one well-known symbol with a hammer is the former Soviet Union's hammer and sickle, where the hammer represents the industrial working class and the sickle represents the agricultural working class. Hammers are still around in modern times, of course, but the majority of their use now is as a tool rather than a weapon. While you certainly wouldn't want one to fall on your head in a construction zone, the basic hammer has found itself by and large in the shadow of its more military-focused cousins, the warhammer and maul. In D&D, light hammers are described as a small sledgehammer, usually with a haft made out of wood that measures about 45 centimeters long. In older editions, hammers were classified as martial weapons due to the training required to use them effectively as an offhand and thrown weapon. They would cost up to 1 gold piece, weighed 1 kilogram, and dealt 1d4 bludgeoning damage. In 5th edition, the light hammer is a simple weapon that costs 2 gold pieces, weighs 1 kilogram, deals 1d4 bludgeoning damage, and has the light and thrown weapon properties. Despite being the only weapon in the hammer family that can be used as a ranged weapon, the light hammer is fairly underwhelming as a primary weapon. With the lowest damage dice available to mundane weapons and a not so insignificant gold cost, the light hammer really relies on its weapon properties to remain usable at all. The light weapon property allows the light hammer to be used in two-weapon fighting, meaning that if an attack action is made with a light melee weapon held in one hand, the wielder can use their bonus action to attack with a different light melee weapon being held in the other hand. The thrown weapon property allows the light hammer to be effectively thrown with a normal range of 20 feet and a long range of 60 feet. Even with these properties laid out, the light hammer gets outperformed by many other simple weapons in terms of damage or flexibility. If you want a good dual-wielding weapon, the dagger is more flexible through finesse, and the hand axe does more damage. If you want a good thrown weapon, the javelin has a much longer range, and the hand axe does more damage. The only way the light hammer's damage can compete with the mace or quarterstaff is by dual wielding it, which takes up a free hand and your bonus action in combat. With all these things in mind, it's pretty easy to rank the light hammer as one of the most overlooked and underpowered weapon options in 5th edition. So, the light hammer is not a viable long-term weapon option in D&D. That much is apparent. Its design indicates that it was likely intended to be used as a stat block for improvised weapons, like if a group of peasants decided to attack the adventuring party with mallets. But what if, for the sake of story or roleplay, we want our character to wield light hammers as their main weapon? Maybe we want to roleplay as a dwarf barbarian who uses the hammers from their forge to strike down their foes. Or maybe we just want to dual-wield bludgeoning weapons because that's a super sick thing to do. If we leave the light hammer as it is now, those characters are going to be using a weapon that is actively hindering their usefulness in combat. So, let's look at how we can improve the light hammer in D&D. My first suggestion is to give the light hammer an expanded critical range, meaning attacks with the light hammer critically strike on a natural 19 or natural 20. While this wasn't present for the light hammer in 3rd edition or Pathfinder, I feel that adding it not only gives the light hammer something that makes it stand out a bit from the other simple weapons, but also buffs its damage output significantly. This makes the light hammer good for strength-based crit fishing classes, such as the champion fighter, where the player is going to focus on critically striking to do more damage, rather than wielding the strongest weapon they can. I will note that I did suggest this for the dagger as well, and considering the dagger and light hammer are already similar in so many aspects, having them share an expanded crit range seems like it would work well for both of them. The next suggestion I have would be to add Pathfinder 2nd Edition's expanded critical effects that they have for hammers. In Pathfinder, when a critical strike is rolled with a weapon, that weapon's group adds an additional effect onto the attack. For hammers, this effect knocks the target prone. This alone makes dual-wielding hammers a lot more viable, as if your first attack crits and knocks the creature prone, any follow-up melee attacks before the creature gets up would be rolled with advantage, making it much easier to hit and crit them again. This would essentially provide a similar effect to the Battlemaster's trip attack maneuver, but since this effect would only trigger on critical strikes, I feel that it wouldn't come up enough to fully replace the effectiveness of a Battlemaster fighter. My third suggestion would be to give the light hammer the ability to stun an opponent on a critical strike. Conditions are extremely powerful in 5th edition, but unfortunately there's very little opportunity for characters using mundane weapons to inflict them. In 5th edition, a stunned creature is incapacitated, can't move, automatically fails strength and dexterity saving throws, and has attack rolls against it roll at advantage while the condition is active. By adding a stunned condition onto critical strikes with the light hammer, this gives the weapon a utility role in combat alongside its damage potential, setting up large and tough enemies for bigger attacks from the rest of the party. I do think that this effect would synergize well with the expanded critical range idea, setting up the light hammer to be a utility powerhouse that deals less damage than other weapons, but inflicts debilitating conditions that can normally only be done through spells, magic items, or the monk's stunning strike ability. These are just a few of my own suggestions on how to make the light hammer better in D&D 5th edition. I believe that if any of these changes were implemented, the light hammer would become a really viable option for people who forgot it even exists in D&D. Granted, a lot of these suggestions center around making it a crit-focused weapon, but I feel that adding critical effects to the lowest damaging weapons allows you to keep that 1d4 damage dice in place while making the weapon feel like it does more damage. And this feeling is really what these suggestions are all about, because we should want every weapon choice to feel rewarding, impactful, and fun for the players. On that note though, we come to the end of today's video on the light hammer. A weapon that's fallen by the wayside, I would not be surprised if this is the first time some of you are hearing about this weapon in any capacity. If we just take some minor tweaks to how the weapon interacts with critical hits, the light hammer can go from an unusable weapon that's worse than its peers in every way to a dedicated crit fishing weapon that can provide a good amount of damage if you roll right. However, what I want to know is, what do you think of the light hammer? Do you think it should stay an obscure and bad weapon? Do you think one of the suggestions I put forward can make it usable? Or did you have a different suggestion for how to make it a viable weapon option? You can let me know in the comments down below, or you can join the Alt-Roll Discord using the link in the description to discuss it there. While on the server, you can pop into our courses that teach the basics of D&D. And if you like what we do, supporting us on our Ko-fi goes a long way in helping us keep Alt-Roll going. That's all I had for you though. So thank you all for watching, make sure to have a great rest of your day, and I'll see all of you next time.